Right. Welcome to Between Dimensions with Twin Essence. I'm Lacey, and I'm Marley, and we're your Starseed Lightworker hosts. As collective ascension guides, we are always navigating our 3D and 5D worlds. In other words, we're between dimensions, learning to embody our multidimensionality just like you. During Between Dimensions, you get the best of both worlds, 5D conversations in a 3D format. Today, we are joined by Chintal with the Sacred Haveli, and she is a spiritual and transformational guide, a mentor, and theta healing instructor. So, welcome, Chintal. We're so happy to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you so much, ladies. I'm really excited and looking forward to our conversation today as well. And I love what you've just said about navigating between the three-dimensional and the five-dimensional. Totally hear you on that one.
Yes. So, the spiritual topic for tonight is going to be what is a sign that the universe sent you and you ignored it until it hit you in the face. So, viewers, you are welcome to put it in the chat. If you're watching the replay later, you can put it in the comments. Chantal, do you want to start first with this one?
Oh, a really juicy one, which is exactly what initiated my whole journey.
Amazing.
So I I would say, for years and years, I probably was getting signs, but because I was not aware of those signs, I just carried on in the three-dimensional world, just doing the usual, going out there, serving, giving, doing all those things. And I had a few signs of you need to slow down, but I ignored them. And it was when I literally went crash, bang, wallop, straight on the floor with my health, back in 2017, I would say, is when I was like, okay, I could see where those little hints were coming through, but because I was just so in the whole doing and running in this world, I really didn't listen to the not just the inner whispers, but even when people used to say to me, why don't you go and do a bit of meditation? Why don't you go and do a bit of yoga? And I remember at that point, I was like, wow, if any one more person tells me to do that, have you seen this fist? So that's literally then, what initiated this whole journey. And then as I went through this whole journey and I was like, those are all little nudges and signs. And universe said, well, if you're not going to listen to me, there's only one way I'm going to make you listen to me. And that's it. Once your body stops, you got to stop.
Yes, that's so true. Actually, spirit, we do as humans, we do take a lot on physically, I think. I think there are so many things that you go through energetically and spiritually that if you're not listening, if the 3D physical health often is a great way for them to get your attention.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think one of the examples of ignoring signs from the universe would be like the most glaring one that I can think of that was a big one for us is like last year we were getting ready to film a branding video and we had a location picked out and we kept having like roadblocks come up with the location of like, can't do this, can't do that, gotta pivot here. And finally, we were like, you know what? This is just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not making sense. So we completely like pivoted everything. And it ended up being like the best decision we ever made. It was like exactly what we wanted. We're like, all right, this actually fits the vision we were having. I remember like reaching the point of like burn it all down. We're just like, yeah, like pull the plug on this. We need to pivot now. Yeah, but it did take quite a few, I think, roadblocks to like recognize like it's okay for us to pivot, it's okay for us to change. It's still gonna end up the way we want it to.
Yeah, and I suppose in these situations, and I can again, resonate with what you're saying. I think sometimes we get so focused on just the one way of achieving something or getting to, what we want to get to, but spirit and our, the our higher guides, like they have such a different plan for us. And we're trying to control and hold on to everything. And they're like, well, you can try, but you can do the easier way by just letting go of that control and allowing us to step in, because then we'll make it much more easier for you, but also better than what you anticipated in your own way, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. That the element of surprise as the universe likes to give us.
Yes.
So let's start off by talking about your spiritual journey. Like, where did that start for you? Is it something that has always been like, have you always had that multidimensional existence since you were a child, or was it something that developed later in life in adulthood?
So I would say that looking back on my journey now, having had been brought up, having been born and brought up in Kenya in Africa, I noticed that as a child I was always feeling energy, but I didn't know at that point what that was. And I always had a very deep connection to faith, spirituality. Like, from a young age, you'd find me, I suppose, engaging in a lot of spiritual activities, which if you were to look at maybe another child of my age who may not really be into it, it was so interesting. So when I look back on it, and I grew up with my grandma. We lived with my grandma and my granddad, and she was, we had a huge temple room in our home, and every morning that used to be my, time with her and with God and with all the things that we used to do from a spirituality point of view as well, and then faith point of view. So I always knew I felt energy, but I just didn't understand it. And then I would find myself, and I look back and I'm thinking, how did I know at that age? Like what was it at that age when adults around me were not into any of that? How did I know? That's when I was like, okay, this wasn't something new. It was something that I was just remembering. But, when I was very young, so I would say, because when I came to the UK, I was 12. So I was very, very young when all of this started for me. And I remember I used to get really intrigued by magic work. I used to get really intrigued by, when the people used to like move objects like with their mind or the body. And I used to be like, oh, I can do that, and I just started to get really, really curious. But one of the biggest thing that I experienced was it was sickness and ill health. And now I know what it was I used to be absorbing everyone's energies. And obviously I didn't know how to obviously transmute them at that point, or know the right, path in knowing that actually we have higher power that can just, take this and transmute it. We're not the ones doing it. So I always knew that I had that. But I guess what happened is, like we were just saying, when we first started, life happens. And when life happens, you lose that connection because you get so integrated into the three-dimensional, and everything looks shiny in the three-dimensional. So of course you want to just follow that path. And then it wasn't until I would say around, so I've always had my connection, I always have, but I knew something was missing. Because even when I used to sit and pray, I felt that there was a little something felt vacant inside me. And I was like, I just didn't know what that was. And then, like I gave an example, it was around 2017 when actually I went through all those health issues, went through burnout, and I was just like, what is all of this? And I was like, okay, that's when I questioned everything, my existence. Who am I? Who am I without all these roles as as a mom, as a daughter, as a therapist, as all of that? If I was to take all that away, who am I? And what was going on with me? And I realized how depleted I felt. I just felt so depleted. I felt like I couldn't answer anything without those titles. So that's where my journey, my whole spiritual journey really started. And then around 2020, when the world went through, what everyone experienced, because I was frontline in healthcare, I ended up falling sick. And then I was in my bedroom for the 7 days recovering. And when everyone else was really fearful, I was just smiling for the 7 days. I had like the biggest smile on my face. I had no physical energy to sit on the edge of the bed or anything, but I just felt white light around me. I At one point I knew I'd ascended. I'd come out of my body. And all I literally felt was as soon as I'd elevated, it was like I felt them pushing me down to say, your mission hasn't even started yet.
Wow.
And that was like a surreal moment. I was like, what is this? It felt like I was in a complete different dimension. I felt I was connected to a very different energy because the physical body wasn't great, but there was this energy that was keeping me going. And I knew that was not my physical energy. And everything from then onwards, it was like everything I had plugged back in through my true essence. So I would say 2020 really kind of brought me back into that alignment of my journey, my path. And, like they say, that's when the whole spiritual journey really, really awakened, activated, and I've never looked back.
Amazing. I think there's something to be said about the fear element that was going on very rampantly in the world at that time, but also like the way you're describing it, like you were connected to source energy, and it's like there is no fear when you're connected to source. There
Yeah,
isn't really anything to fear on the path. And I think
absolutely.
too, like it's happening for you, right? Like that's how, at least that's how Lacey and I navigate a lot happening right now too. And we talk about this a lot as collective ascension guides, but it's happening for us because I think back to that time too, where there was, I mean, in that pandemic period, there was a lot of fear, but I remember not having a lot of fear. I viewed it as like, look at what's going to come out of this. Like, I think there's a lot that came out of that that we did need as a collective.
I agree. I totally agree. And even now, when we look at what's going on in the world, being a sensitive empath, you can really connect with, okay, the fears coming back and stuff. But, I keep just saying, I keep repeating this word, and I'm like, you need to have discernment. Your power is your discernment. And when you can discern, and that discernment comes once you know who you truly are.
Yes. So you did talk about having like a more clinical 3D healthcare related career. I'm curious what that transition was like going from that type of work environment to becoming more of a multidimensional spiritual guide, mentor, healer. How did that transition work? And do you feel that that third dimensional career supported you or influences your work today yet?
Such a beautiful question. Thank you for asking. Yeah, so I love doing what I did. I did it for over 20 years. Otherwise, I would not have done it for so long. Because my work, my role was very much about, again, working with other humans. It was about supporting their rehabilitation, their recovery. And even as a clinical therapist, it was all about guiding those individuals to really live their best life and bring meaning to their life and purpose to their life, despite navigating health issues or trauma. It was like, wow, let's look at a bigger picture from here. And as I was going through my journey and that transition, it felt very uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie, because you're based in a very you're based in a very medical based model. And you have like intuition saying something to you, saying, oh, but there is another path here. When I'm looking at the as a when I'm looking at my client at that point, or a patient as a whole, as holistic, I'm like, oh, there's something else going on. And I remember later on, the latter stages before I actually left, I was like, no, I'm just going to ask the patient about certain things. When did this first start? What was going on? And how can I support you best in a way that looks at other elements as well? And that's when I started to realize that yes, this work, it's influenced what I'm doing now. And yes, I still work a lot with my occupational therapy skills and principles in the work that I do now as a multidimensional, guide, mentor, transformational work that I do. But I do it in more depth. So initially, that stage, that period felt really uncomfortable because I was surrounded by people who wouldn't understand me. I'd go into a workplace where I could just feel the energy. And I was like, oh my God, like it felt like it wasn't very nice. It felt heavy at times. It felt really uncomfortable. And then you could just see everyone, but I would have to keep stepping out. It's like that bird's eye view. I'd have to keep stepping out and be like, okay, come back into my alignment, to go back into that space. So it took a while for me to really understand how to integrate who I was becoming into the environment I was in, but also have that awareness that the environment was no longer serving my whole identity of who I was becoming as well, and how I was supporting an individual. So when it came to, doing the clinical work, I guess, I mean, some of my work colleagues used to really, they used to call me like, they always used to send me out to the most complex clients because they're like, you always get to the root cause of it. And I'm like, because they didn't know that I utilized my intuition,
Yep. Mm.
you know?
I
And
feel
I was
like
like,
I feel like everything that
wow.
you're saying is like describing our experience with government. Like, okay, gotta zoom out, higher perspective, people. All
Yes.
right, how am I gonna handle this one? Like,
And it's really uncomfortable, but we have to keep reminding ourselves that we've chosen to come here on this earth because of our mission, and we cannot hide away or escape from it, right? But we've got to learn how to navigate and integrate. But I think it's so important for, whether it's our listeners, whether they're live or whether they're watching on replay. I think it's so important for them to understand as well that even like whether it's a psychological health issue, a physical health issue, there is there is depths of emotional suppression that is linking to, the physical, the physical symptom is a manifestation of what's not been dealt with or, acknowledged on the other realms that we are part of. So I believe that my work really did support me. I believe everything on my journey has been just as it should be. And, now I can, when I'm working with individuals and, I have the clinical experience and I have my spiritual holistic experience and my intuition and psychic abilities where I'm able to scan in and be like, oh, I can see where this is coming from. Let's go work with it and let's go pull that out to reprogram you so that you're not having to carry all of that you've been carrying for so long that doesn't need to be there anymore.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point. I also I think when people are on any kind of spiritual healing or even like ascension path of any sort, like you will find yourself, the more in alignment I think you become, the more you will find yourself developing physical symptoms of whatever you're processing and moving through in terms of like healing cycles. Because I find that with myself too. Like I know when something physical develops, like what it's tied to. I'll be like, okay, let's see, what am I moving through? Okay, it's the knee, it's this side of the body. It's okay, we got to look at this because clearly I'm like in the frequency of processing something that needs to be reprogrammed. Well, and I remember too for myself, like I learned that really early on in my awakening, like when I had like um wrist problems. It was like a control thing I was going through. And it was like I remember being at like my 3D, like my role in government, like wearing like a brace on my hand, like things that like they're like Marley, you're way too young to have these problems, and also like you're not even that far into your career, and I'm like, okay, like I know what's going on here, you guys, like I'm working on it, okay, like this isn't gonna be like this forever.
Oh, 100%. And it's interesting you mention about the risk because I remember I had really bad like tennis elbow. Oh, the pain. And this is when I was moving through the whole, transition from where I was working into what I'm doing. And it was on the right side. And right is always about moving forward, right? And you're just like, oh, and then the masculine energy that's within us. And it's like, and interestingly, I realized that, touch wood for a good few years, I've actually not had the elbow issue.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's how I feel too. Like I'm like I have the brace, but I put it in, pack it away. Like have I learned my lesson on that one?
And it is, isn't it? It's about honoring that actually we are all here as humans, we're here to evolve. And the minute we stop evolving is when people really start to feel stuck. And it's like, no, you're not stuck. You're not having a midlife crisis that everyone seems to say they have when they hit their 40s. It's like, no, it's not a midlife crisis. It's because this is another chapter. And either you resist your evolving or you go with the flow in your evolution kind of thing. We're here for something greater, we're here for something bigger, and I do believe that so many more, and billions more people, souls are awakening in this path. I really feel like in the last, I would say in the last year or so, and more in the last 6 months or so, like just witnessing, I can feel like so many more are awakening and are on this path of ascension. But there is so much of this, what we call the good, the bad, the dualities and all that. And actually, it's like, no, can you guys actually, start seeing things from that higher perspective of there has to be both. You can't have one without the other.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Just the part you said even about like as humans we evolve, because that's what Lacey and I always say. We always say ascension is evolution. That is what it
100%.
is. And I know we trigger a lot of people when we say this, but but I'm like, you have to have duality. Like if we didn't have quote unquote negative things or traumas or negative experiences, we wouldn't be pushing other groups of people forward to the awakening, right? Forward to the evolution process. Like it really is happening for us. You have
Yeah,
to, we go through all these things for a reason and we have to have all of it. And that's what it is. It's ascension is an integration of both ends of the spectrum. And it's like you understand it and you can accept it. And then that's when the true integration process occurs.
totally, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And that came, for me, even from when I was doing my, I remember when when I studied my occupational therapy degree, the BSc honors degrees, long time ago, long, long time ago. Even then, it was all about it's about how we're choosing to lead our life, and we're looking at an individual as in the center point, and we're looking at how the environment impacts that individual, how the beliefs, the values, their spirituality, how is it all impacting their ability to function in their day-to-day life, in their work life, in their hobbies, and where's this imbalances. So I can see how much of all of that, going back to even when you were talking about how is it all influenced, like I can see how much all of that has really shaped me and my guidance and the teachings and everything that I do, because it's so important for everyone to understand that, even on this journey of ascension or evolution or this journey of transformation, we have to truly first of all, accept every aspect of it. That is part because we're learning. That is a learning. If everything was just great, you're not really going to evolve. You're not going to learn from it in a way, and
Yes.
I say that loosely because yes, you can still learn from all of that, but you really have to appreciate. So what I guess I'm trying to say is you will truly appreciate all of that growth in that, in that light energy. And I say light is that LITE energy and all of that once you truly honor that darkness as well. And once you truly honor the lessons learned in the shadow as well.
Definitely, and it's the same with making mistakes, like, if everything you did in your life was perfect, you would probably learn nothing. And you wouldn't and then it's like you wouldn't ascend, you wouldn't return to source. I'm like, if you just stayed rainbows and sunshine, nothing happened, there'd be no point to the existence.
Absolutely. Totally. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I want to dig into your work with theta healing. So
Mm.
what is it and how did you like tap into this modality and become an instructor?
Ooh, I love that. So I'm gonna go, I'll start with how I actually got into it. It wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't something that I said, oh, I'm gonna go do that. No. So like with a lot of people, when we go on this journey, and this is like, and I said when I started this journey around 2017, 2018, when we look at social like Google, social media now, all that, there's so much more out there than what there was around that time. Um, I didn't know who I needed to approach. I didn't know what I needed to do, who was going to help me, but I knew there was somebody local enough to me who was doing Reiki healing, and they were a attunement teacher and stuff. And so I reached out to them and I started with Reiki healing. And then I became attuned to the Usui, traditional Usui Reiki, and I was just practicing with that. And of course, as we go through all of that, so much comes up. And there were days and times where I'm like, what do I do with this now? Like you're like, okay, all this is like stirring the muddy pot. All the mud has come up, and you're like, okay, I don't know what to do with this now. Like, when you're feeling completely destabilized or fractured and you're like, oh, shall I just stop all this because that might just make life easier? But then spirit inside is like, nope, no going back now. It's like, okay. But I kept hearing this voice that you're here for something deeper. You're here for deeper. You're here for deeper. And I was like, okay. So I just trusted. And I remember just one day praying and I said, you know what? I don't know what this means. I don't know the who, I don't know the what, I don't know the when, and I don't know the why. But I know I'm connected to you, God. And I said, I want you to lead me to somebody who not just teaches or not just, you know, uh, kind of shares. I want somebody who actually practices what they're preaching. They walk the talk. I want somebody who is dedicated and devoted on their journey so that I know that I'll be guided in the right way. So during the pandemic, whilst I was home, I had a just again online, I came across this life coaching, and it was a 10-day, you can do it for free. And it was the first time ever I fulfilled something. I participated every single day for 10 days. And I was like, wow, like, well done. You did that. And I said to my husband, I said, I feel I really want to do this life coaching. And he goes, okay. He goes, if it's going to help you, then we'll find the funds and we'll do it. So I did it. Knowing that who I did the certification with, she herself had mentioned that she was a theta healer. But even for that year, nothing registered from that point because I was just doing life coaching. it was the end of 2020 that somebody had put up a post, a local post in our Facebook community group, that they were doing like a day retreat or a half day retreat, and it was in my town. And I was like, oh, this is great because I don't have to travel further out. Because everything I was trying to look for, it was always further out. So, like, over an hour's drive or a couple of hours of traveling. And I was like, I want something closer to home. And then I reached out to this person. They were literally 3 minutes down the road to me. So I was like,
Wow.
okay, this is spirit guiding, aligned. And I went there not knowing, and they mentioned again theta healing. Again, I didn't take notice of it. All I knew was my soul was calling me. I just went. That was it. And I remember when I walked into that space, I could feel this energy, but this energy of I'm in a space where there was other people there, but literally as soon as they asked a question, that was it. Floodgates just opened up. I just poured and bawled my eyes out. Like I could hear my soul crying. And I was like, wow, that's not happened for a long time. And that's basically where I met my theta healing practitioner and mentor, who I then went on to work with for 4 years. And then last year, so I've been doing theta healing for about just over 5 years now. And then last year, everyone's like, you need to now go out there and teach. You've embodied this work so deep. You need to go out there and teach. And I could feel that it was coming. So last year, I decided then to actually do the instructors training directly with Viana and her team. And that's basically what, led me on that journey. So to answer your question about what theta healing is, theta healing technique is a modality that was founded by Viana Steibel in 1995. And it is a meditative technique. So what we do is we connect through kind of like meditation or prayer. We guide you into a theta brainwave state, which is the most relaxed brainwave state, so that we can connect deep with the subconscious. So we can let the ego step away and we can go directly into the subconscious. But through that, what we're doing is we're connecting with the emotional and physical subconscious blocks or belief systems. Theta healing is really, really, the main kind of principles around theta healing is the belief work and then the feeling work. And ensuring that we do everything through source. So everything is done through creator. So it
Amazing.
all aligned for me because it helped, for me, I was like, I love with my pure direct connection with God, that's the alignment. And with theta healing, there's science attached to it and there's the psychic spiritual side attached to it as well. I love that because, I like my science as well, but I love, I blend in the kind of spiritual ancient wisdom with all the work that I do as well. And because it works with the brain waves as well, so you can actually tell and you can notice and you can see that actually which brainwave state people go into as the alpha, the beta, the theta, the delta. So the theta is what we work with, which is why it's known as theta healing. So theta healing is a modality that changed my whole life for me. When I question things, I found the answers through theta healing. It gave me that structure, but also it helped a lot with, where I used to sometimes get so bogged down with the negative mindset and the scarcity and the lack. I was able to come out of that and really reprogram myself more from the positive mindset. So, like you were saying earlier, when a situation happens, it happens for us for a reason when we start seeing things from a high perspective. But also, with the theta healing side of things, the biggest crux of it is you are unraveling the layers. So what you're doing is you are learning about yourself. It's a modality which I feel is so powerful in terms of your self-discovery journey. But it gives you the answers that you seek rather than just being like, oh, okay, it's this, or okay, you're really coming back to that discernment. You're opening up so much more of your psychic abilities, your intuitive abilities as well. And you're identifying which belief systems are actually holding you back from truly living your highest potential. So I felt that it really aligned with all the work and my purpose and my mission that I'm here for. It really supports me in all of that. So, I kind of now bring all of that together. So it's not just theta healing, or it's not just occupational therapy, it's not just Reiki. It's a real blend of it all because it's my own unique way of guiding individuals on their journey of their transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I think so. I'm curious with doing that technique. I know, like in quantum hypnosis, that's also like guiding you back to a theta brainwave state, and I've actually done that before. Do you feel like with theta healing that it's like I know you talked about subconscious, but do you find like your higher self also participates in that?
Yes. Your
Okay.
higher self does participate, but we're doing everything through creator. So what happens in that essence is we're able to have the discernment between, is this creator's guidance or is this higher self? Because you've got to remember our higher self, yes, it's wiser than us, but it still has its own opinions and it still has ego to it as well. Whereas when we work directly through creator, there is no ego attached to it, but there is a lot of truth.
Yep, that makes sense.
So
I can
yes,
also
there's
see.
there's a whole, there is, even with theta healing, that it's about quantum, like taking you into that quantum leaping, quantum journey.
Yeah, I think too, like as you're describing it though, like one thing that would make this different than like hypnotherapy is the feeling part too, because you talked about like beliefs and feeling, and I think like at least I guess in my experience, like in therapy, it's a lot more like you access that brain, the subconscious, right? And you are accessing beliefs and accessing higher self and uh more pure information, I guess, on you, but theta healing does sound like there's that feeling portion too, which I think is really, really important when we talk about like reprogramming and like the manifestation process even, right? Like you have to understand your state of being and how feeling impacts that state of being too.
Absolutely. And you've got to remember that, you know, if, for example, let's just look at unconditional love. Now, everyone's perception of love is going to be different based on their experiences. So if you were to explain to somebody, okay, just connect to love. And if they've grown up in an environment where love was always conditioned or love was a transaction and it became uncomfortable or fearful for them, they're not going to want to be connected to love. Even though love is who we are and we derive from love. So with theta healing, what happens is we are aligning you to creator's purest definition, knowledge, feeling, understanding, perception of what that love is into your cells. So it's very somatic as well, because it's like you're not just doing on a mind level, you're going deeper. You're going so much more deeper. And with theta healing as well, we're not just looking at you're not just looking at kind of like, say, your inner child. You're also looking at what's your soul brought from the past life that's impacting you in this life. We're looking at the history level of everything as well, what's been going on, but then your ancestral genetic patterns as well. So it kind of like really, it's so deep, but it literally connects with all those different areas so that you're not having to be, because we're layers, right? We're all layers. And we have to remember that actually we all know that the body holds the score, but the body has to feel safe enough to release it as well. So if your body does not know what safety feels like, how is it going to release?
Makes sense. And that also makes sense that that example you gave with like why we have to have creator or source energy involved, right? That love, that unconditional love example, that is that totally makes sense. I think too, like it's I don't know. I think sometimes people are looking to like outsource answers to something else, like rather than putting in the work themselves. So sometimes I think they might fall victim to like wanting any kind of like teacher, healer, leader, mentor to like give them the answers to something. And sometimes it's like, no, like you just need the tools to be able to go in and find your own answers and have the and develop that skill and muscle yourself because that's ultimately like connecting to your own inner power, right? Like I don't think any guide, healer, mentor is like responsible for like someone's work. They help facilitate the work for someone, right? And they create the space for someone to create the changes they desire, but it's not like they're the ones like solely like doing it for someone. And so I think sometimes that's a good thing for people to remember.
Oh, 100%. And you know, that's exactly what I say. I said, I'm here to empower you. It's about you connecting to that power that's within your own self, you know, to seek those answers that are already available to you. But it's about strengthening, like you said, it's strengthening that your own muscle of that intuition, knowing that, you know, we all have intuition. We all have psychic abilities. It's just knowing how to access it. And then once you have the ability to do that, you know, yeah, like you said, you know, for me as well as a guide, as a teacher, as a mentor, you know, I'm there to facilitate that guidance and holding that space and that frequency. But ultimately, you're the one who's having to put that work in to be able to, you know, you're building that trust with yourself again. You know, so many people abandon themselves and outsource, like you said, outsource. You know, it's kind of like giving your power away every time. You know, you go out there and say to somebody else, oh, yes, I want this. Or, oh, can you give me an answer for that? Or can you? And you're outsourcing your power. Whereas actually, if you can say, do you know what? I just require somebody to guide me, to hold that space for me so that I can actually connect with what I need to connect with and receive what guidance and answers I need. I've had many people come to me with major life decisions and be like, what shall I do? And I said, well, you've got the answer. I'm not going to tell you what to do, you know, but like, and I'm not going to influence your decision making either. But all I can do, and I know I do it really well, I can tell you what's blocking you from accessing what you need to access, and I can guide you into clearing all of that, and also hold that space so you can then connect with source yourself in whilst I'm holding that space for you to be able to be like, okay, what feels right for me? Does this feel right for me or does that feel right for me? And I guide them into what it feels like also on a somatic part of it. How's your body responding to it? So it's such a deep process and but it's all about leading them to their truth and their power because it's in everyone.
Absolutely. Yes, and you're so spot on the body piece too, right? Like half the time our body is like a division divination tool in itself. Like if you can drop into it, you can tell like, am I contracting or am I expanding at this thought?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I am curious because we do a lot of work with Twin Essence on mission and purpose for individuals. What do you consider your mission and purpose in this lifetime?
Oh, I feel, and I believe, shall I say, I believe that my mission and purpose is to help individuals, to really guide souls to drop the illusions and awaken to their truth, align with their truth, heal what blocks them from aligning with their truth so that they can actually live that embodied truth life, with that confidence, with that clarity, and be who they are. Because when they are connected to their truth and and aligned in that truth, they're able to navigate life in a much more easier way, like I always, and this comes from, there's a saying in the Bhagavad Gita where, pain is inevitable and suffering is optional.
Oh,
And once we know who we are, we can actually reduce the amount of suffering we put ourselves through as humans. Because yes, the pain may still be there because that's inevitable, but the choice of suffering is actually upon you. And I know it sounds a little bit like a harsh truth, but truth is, I work a lot with truth and the law of truth. So, it's like, yes, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's what's going to get you to that liberation. So for me, it's very much like aligning the souls who I work with who are in my space. It's like, let's align you with your truth. Let's heal those blocks. Let's heal the energetic blocks. Let's heal the ancestral generational stuff that you're carrying so that you can step into your truth, so that you can live and lead your life in the embodied truth and make a difference, because it's not just making a difference to them. There's that ripple effect into their environment. So whether it's families or, their friends, but it's making that impact globally as well into the world.
oh yeah. That's so I don't think I've ever heard that quote, that saying, but that's so true. I had chills when you said it. Um, and that's exactly what Lacey and I talk about all the time with the groups that we work with, the clients we work with. Like high tides raise all boats. Like you are responsible for changing your reality and yourself, but in turn, that's what's going to reflect something different to those around you, and it's just going to create that ripple. And even that piece about like the suffering, like it reminds me of when Lacey and I always tell people, like, and through the messages that we channel with the different star beings we connect with, like it, like you are choosing how you're going to react and respond to things. And I'm not saying you can't have an emotional reaction or you can't feel into emotions on things, but how you approach things, how you let things impact you, like what you choose to do with your energy, I think can greatly impact the reality that you're creating and what's being reflected back to you.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about response or react, right? And
Mhm.
we all want to, when you ask everyone, yes, everyone will say that they want this or they want that, but ultimately, when we look right at the core, everyone is seeking that liberation and freedom. That liberation and freedom is only going to come from when you start taking ownership of yourself. It's only going to come when you start taking ownership of your own responses, reactions, emotions, your own healing, your own ascension, your own transformation. Yes, you want that, but it is a journey. And that's what I say. And I know there's some, that like if I was to say a little bit about the pet peeve of the whole spiritual side of things, there's a lot of spiritual fluff out there. True spirituality actually demands honesty and courage. If you want to truly lead your life authentically, if you truly want to lead your life in that freedom, then you've got to take radical responsibility for yourself. That's what true spirituality really demands from you. It's not just the airy fairy, like we were saying, rainbows and crystals all the time, because where there's highs, there's going to be lows. But how are you in those lows? And that's what this is all about. Instead of being like, oh my God, this is just doomsday. No, it's not. Where's that light? Bring that light and that love into that low that you're in, because even the low requires your love and your affection and your guidance and your attention and acknowledgement, right? But it's like instead of being like this is good or bad, it's like okay, there is both. And I think a lot of people don't want to accept the shadow side. They just want to accept the light, but they've got to remember the higher they ascend, the brighter the light that they're going to shine, but that light is also going to shine the light on the shadows. So
Yep.
it works hand, it works hand in hand, you know? It's messy, but it's a beautiful
Totally
journey.
does. And like you're right, that is the more radical path, and that's what it demands of you. I think the other thing with that is that like there's no victimhood in
No.
spirituality. And I think that like, gosh, I think like society, like the matrix programming is like it just ingrains so much victimhood in people to always feel like everything's happening to me and there's nothing I can do and I'm powerless and it's like you need to like flip that over. There's no victimhood in this. Like you're responsible for everything that you're putting out there and how you're responding. And I think that a lot of people I think sometimes it's safer and more comfortable for people to stay in victimhood than it is to walk the path of like radical truth and liberation. So,
Yeah.
like, the spiritual path isn't going to be for everyone, but more and more are waking up. So, more and more are going to be asked to walk that path and actually shine the light on the dark corners and embrace that dualistic experience.
I 100% totally agree. And I love, yeah, I love that. I love that whole part of no victimhood. Absolutely.
Get it? I
Absolutely.
get it. It's comfortable, but come on, we got to move out of that.
It serves, but it no longer serves. If you want to move forward, it's no longer going to serve you. You know, something has to change. You know, and I speak and I say that, and I, you know, personally as well. Like, you know, I still navigate through certain health challenges, you know, a few months ago, just latter part of last year, getting diagnosed with different things. And like you were saying, it's like as soon as we're moving through something deep in our life, physically it will manifest. But I knew that actually this isn't that I haven't done the work. This is just the physical side is now releasing and it's got to come out of the body in some way, shape, or form. Where's my responsibility lie in that? You know, what can I do to support this rather than being like, oh my God, I've gone backwards, or oh my God. And yes, you can have those thoughts because I still have those thoughts, but I can flip myself out of them really quickly now. Because
Yes.
as soon as I notice the awareness is there, I've got the choice. I can either sit in that or I can be like, okay, you know, this used to work before, it no longer works. Now it's I think the biggest thing is moving forward not from a place of fear but from a place of awareness.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good point. And giving yourself the space to pivot when you know something's not working, because it's not
Yes,
always going to continue to work. I
100%.
I think, do you want to move into spiritual this or that? Yes, I think so. This will be fun. Okay. Let's start with crystals or Reiki. Which do you prefer?
Crystal.
Crystal? Oh, okay. That's fascinating to me because you did start off like on a Reiki. Reiki's such a gateway. Like Lacey and I always say Reiki's like a gateway to spirituality, so that's so interesting. I would choose crystals as well. Me too. Me too.
Yeah, because we're also part
Um,
of that.
yeah. Tarot cards or oracle cards?
Oracle cards.
I'm on oracle card too. Oracle cards as well. I've never been able to get behind the personality of a tarot deck. Um, pendulum or dowsing rods?
Oh, you got two of my favorites there. Oh, they're both coming up for different situations, but I would go for dowsing rods.
Yeah, I feel like I use pendulums more for myself. I feel like I don't use dowsing rods like I used to. I used to use them more, okay, like we had very paranormal origins, so I used to use them more for like talking to spirits. But I never used them for like my own communication. No. Yeah, we use them when talking to spirits, but pendulums I will do sometimes. I feel like pendulums can be helpful with like energy work on the self too.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I would use a pendulum for energy work.
That's what, so for me, it was the same. I would do pendulum for my own energy work side of things, but dowsing rods more for like more for like when we're working with portals and vortexes around and feeling into what kind of energies are there so we can send them into God's,
Yes,
creator's light.
yes.
That's where dowsing rods would come in. So yeah, it was a little bit, yeah.
Full moon or new moon?
Full moon.
I'm a full moon person too. I just don't like, I like the purge. Yeah, full
Release,
moon.
yeah. We're gonna release.
Release. Usually
Release
fires
it.
involved. Tuning fork or singing bowls?
Oh, two of my other really favorites as well. Um, oof, I use singing bowls a lot more. I use
Mm.
tuning forks for one-to-one kind of very close proximity, but singing bowls, sound bowls, I use them for one-to-one but group as well, so I tend to use more of the sound bowls.
I feel like so I've never experienced like a singing bowl. Like I've never had anyone use it like on me or in anything that I've been a part of. So I'm really curious how I would react to it. But I do use a tuning fork, especially like it's great for like travel. Yeah. It's like nice and small for travel. And then I'm curious, do you use like the glass singing bowls or do you use like the
Crystal.
tin? Okay, the
I use
crystal.
the crystal, and I have one or two of um the Tibetan, the hammered bowls, but the crystal ones, the frequency is a lot more. It reaches out a lot more.
Okay. Meditating or journaling?
Meditating.
100%. Meditating. Yeah, I'm a meditation person.
100%.
And then burning incense sticks or like dried loose leaf herb.
Incense sticks because they're easier for me to grab and go on the go.
Yeah, I do like a good incense stick. I actually do a lot more loose leaf. I because we grow a lot, yes. So then we end up having like an abundance of our own herbs that we can
Yeah.
burn. So then I end
Right.
up doing a lot more of the loose leaf. But yeah, it's messy. It's messy. It's not always convenient, I will say.
Yeah. So the loose herbs I've got, I do have some loose herb incense as well. But then you're needing to burn the charcoal, then you're needing to put this. So yeah, incense stick. I've got a good collection, especially non-toxic ones, which are great.
Oh, yes. And then last but not least, spirits or interdimensional beings.
Oh, interdimensional beings.
That would be my choice as well. Yes, interdimensional beings at this point. At one point in time, I might have only said spirits, but not at this point on my path.
Yeah, I'm finding that's my whole kind of tipping point of where I used to be to where I'm now is that the whole interdimensional being is there's so much more.
Do you find, like, at least in our experiences, like, we started very traditional and it was like psychic mediumship was the beginning, and then we moved into our starseed awakenings. I found it became harder to, like, work mediumistically and connect to like human spirits, whereas it was easier for me frequency wise to like work with interdimensional like star beings.
I would say, I think for me, based on where I've been on my journey, obviously slightly different to yours. At the moment, I would say I'm a little bit balanced out with both of those just because of where I am in my journey. So, of course, I've been connecting with spirits and, all that. And then obviously accessing my kind of, the star beings and all those. But I feel a lot of the frequency, if that makes sense. So, that side of things, I'll be able to pick up, I'll be able to feel, I'll be able to see the codes. So I would say at the moment, it's a little bit of a balance of both for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cool. So, how can members of the audience work with you?
So they can work with me. I do a lot of my work online, one to one. and I do some group-based work as well. That tends to be more in person. So if you're in the UK, more than welcome to connect with me for the in person. But anywhere globally, I work mainly online with individuals. So easiest way would be to reach out to me via Instagram. That's where I tend to hang out a lot, or via email. And yeah, I love connecting with people. I like to I get very curious, like to know about people, their journeys, and yeah, so they can connect with me, and then I can guide you through different ways of how we can work together.
Awesome. So with that, we will wrap up. Thank you all for joining us live. You can make sure to check out all of Chintal's work. Everything is linked below in the video description if you want to get in touch with her via website, email, or Instagram. And if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Twinessence LLC. And for those looking to work with us, we recommend starting with a twin magic reading to uncover your starseed lineage. And you can book that on twinessence.com, or you can join us in our very new membership, the Starseed Portal membership, where you will join a community of starseeds navigating their ascension journeys and learning about all the different star beings that you can encounter during your ascension path. All right. Thank you all. We will be back in April. I believe April 10th is the next episode, and we have Kristen Stewart on. That'll be a 3 p.m. Central Time call.